Up here in San Antonio Bay, man, again, the trend continues. Lots of trout that are hanging out on the reefs. We spend a lot of time up in Mesquite Bay, up here in San Antonio Bay. Tons of reefs in San Antonio Bay. If you hadn't had a chance to fish it, man, it's a really great spot. A lot of good areas. You got the Chicken Foot area up here, right off the ICW. These here. If you get further back into San Antonio, there's just one after the other, after the other. Long reefs that are in there. You've got areas you can just drop your boat there, and you got the tapered side and you got the drop edge side. So, and they're not super wide, but they're very very productive. Like I said, the trout are hanging out on these reefs. Water temps are gradually creeping up to get in those mid upper 80s. We are on the edge of August. We're basically a week out or less from August. Anticipate that temperatures to go up from there and be that much more hot. So you really want to focus your areas on those little bit deeper edges on the reefs, that type of structure, hard packed sand, grass, all those types of areas come into play here moving forward as we get closer and get into August. The shoreline here, you've got all this up here, hard packed sand, scattered grass that's in here, and this is a long shoreline that takes you all the way down into Ostwell and Seadrift. All back in that area there. You can get on the other side. I don't typically fish that far north, but we did try, kind of get over and venture off into it and just kind of check these areas out as well. And you got these little back lakes that come back off into here that are all pretty good as well. Shoreline that's in here. But yeah, that's kind of been the trend for us as far as trout goes. Now, that said, you may have to do a little reef hopping, even up here in San Antonio Bay, as good as it is. You may have to, work one of the reefs for a little while and see if you've got fish that are holding on that. So far, production-wise, usually the first reef that we get to, we'll find some trout somewhere up and down that shore or up and down that reef on it. It may take us a minute, but they're there. So, and again, a lot of these reefs are really, really long. I mean, they're like, several hundred yards long. So you're not just going to walk away from it and go, oh, I fished it for an hour and I've already reached the end of it. No, it's not like that up there. If you haven't fished in those San Antonio Bay and fished those reefs, then you'll be pleasantly surprised when you get up there. Now, the thing about it is, now, if you're putting in at Seadrift, it's not that far of a run. Now, if you're coming out of Rockport or Lamar area, yeah, it's a pretty good haul to get up there. It's kind of like it is when you go down to Panther in that area. So but it's worth the run. So if that's what you want and that's what you're trying to find is trout, then you'll be very pleased with your production rate that's up there in that area. Again, now winds play a part in that. So the winds early this past week were not bad at all, very manageable. They kind of calmed down. Of course, afternoons, late evenings or whatever, they kind of picked back up a little bit. Water levels have been, again, fairly on the low side. So it makes these reefs even easier to spot. So that's the one thing about it. If you haven't been in San Antonio Bay and you don't know where these reefs are outside of your GPS marking, with the lower tides, they're easier to find so you don't run up on them or put yourself in your boat in a little bit of jeopardy there. But just kind of ease up there on top of those. All right, so we're in that new moon phase. We're going to be transitioning out of that here in the next few days. We'll be on the back side of that new moon. So, again, we've been working 16th-ounce jig heads. We've been throwing a lot of original size down south in multiple flavors with, Big Papa, Twisted Tea, White Ice, Bone Diamond, the same ones that we've always been throwing, Watermelon Red, and the Truth in the Mirror Lure Little Johns. And we threw a little of the XLs as well, worked the Double D in there in multiple different flavors. Had very decent success with those. Knock and tail lures primarily in the heavy metal and the greenback have been pretty good. Rogue in there as well, sprinkled in. Of course, when you get out there in San Antonio Bay, you get that wind. There's not a lot of protection whatsoever, so it's pretty wide open. So if you get a little higher wind, which are around 12 to 15, maybe even pushing 18, then that water kind of dirties up on you a little bit. So you're going to want something that's got a little noise to it, a lot of movement, a little bit of chartreuse if you so choose. Again, I'm not a big chartreuse guy, but it has its place, and that type of situation scenario does pretty well for us. Pav lures as well. A lot of the 5 and 6 inch in this new moon did pretty well. And then, of course, Coastal Brew, we threw that in there as well and just kind of worked some different ones in their 5 and 6 inch as well. Different flavors. It's all pretty much the same across the board as far as those flavors. Dirtier water, we threw some darker baits. If we found some pretty clean water, we'd throw some more translucent baits. But just work those. We had that Moonrise minor that we got to work in and around a lot, and primarily a lot of our bites came in and around that time frame. Now, as we transitioned away from that minor, the bites came few and far between, but at different times, different days, the bite was better even after the minor time frame had ended. So we kind of extended that. I like to, once we get out of that time frame, about 45 minutes to an hour afterwards, if that bite slows down, I try to go to a smaller bait profile just to see if we can entice those fish a little bit more. Looking at the long range weather this coming up this week is all going to be in the low 90s to maybe mid 90s. So expect that water temp to rise somewhat. So being around the shell is going to be more important right now. So just kind of put that in your plans as we move into this upcoming week. You're around the Paul's Mott area, Big Island, down the Long Reef Bend. Again, working the reefs, all these areas. Got a lot of hard pack, a lot of shell that's scattered in and around those. I'm saying we just kind of worked in and around all these little reef systems that are out here in Aransas Bay. Just kind of set ourselves up for all these particular areas out here. You got a lot of room out there to work these areas. Found some fish on some. Again, you may have to reef hop a little bit to locate. Some of them, once upon a time, they all used to be pretty big. And after, again, I've said this before, after Harvey kind of jacked them up somewhat. So it kind of knocked them down. So with our lower tides that we've had this past week, they've all been accessible to a degree. We got in here, the Long Reef Bend area, worked the outer bar where if you've been on there, you see where all the duck blinds are in a line out there. There's a bar that those kind of sit on. So we just kind of worked the outer edge of that, the deeper grass beds, and had some pretty successful days there. A lot of trout. A few redfish are scattered in there for the most part, but mostly trout that were in there. Then, of course, we came all the way up here. And we worked Jaybird Reef, the Point. Stayed on the outside. We didn't get back into Sherman's, which I like to get into Sherman's a lot. That back lake's probably one of my favorite back lakes to fish. Wasn't a tremendous amount of water in there, so we didn't really waste time with it. We just stayed on the outer edge out there in the thigh to waist deep water out here on the deeper grass. Located our fish up and down the shoreline. Very productive time. The days that we spent out there on this, working it all the way down to the Spalding area and working the little back lake mouths that come in and out of that. Off those areas there. Haven't spent a bunch of time in there in the last few weeks, but this past week we did spend a couple of days up in these areas like that, and was pretty productive for us. Like I say, we found redfish in some of these, lots of trout that are up and down the shoreline. Again, and the one thing, some of the clients that did keep some fish from time to time, we have noticed that a lot of these trout are still holding eggs. They haven't laid them. So just kind of keep that in mind. Unless you just really need those fish, cut them loose, let them go, and let them lay those eggs. That just helps our estuary down the road a little bit. Again, then you kind of work down in here to Carlos in the fingers, just fishing the guts, fishing the top of the shell, in and around those edges like that. So it all set up pretty well for us. Again, the shell is the main thing right now if you're really wanting to find trout. If that's what you want to target, your redfish are going to be a little bit closer to your shoreline, more over your softer bottom, and of course your back lakes if you're fishing back in the backside of a lot of these places like that. But again, with the waters level beat than with what they are, you either have to have your poling skiff, airboat, or something to that effect to get back in some of that, because a lot of it wasn't accessible, at least not with just a regular boat. So like I say, we just fished and focused on the outer edges, out the shell and all that, and that will be our continuing plan moving forward as we get into August. Those fish will continue to be there until something weather-wise really changes, until we get later into September and October possibly. Then we get maybe a little cool front or something that might change that a little bit. But for right now, focus on your shell, focus on the grass, hard-packed sand. That's where you'll find and locate the majority of your fish. Spent a little time this past week up here on Newcomb. Again, great area. You got a lot of different kind of structure at the bottom. You've got grass, you got hard pack in there, you got a little scattered shell, you got a little bit deeper edge. So with the lower tides this past week, we stayed a little bit deeper. We're kind of working our, thigh to waist deep water out here on this outer edge. Wind didn't blow us away, so it really set up well for us all the way down the shoreline, out here to the point on it. Once upon a time, long time ago, from this point all the way out here to where Lap Reef and all that stuff is, that all used to be connected, so you had to go like really far around to get back to the backside of Copano. But we came out here, jumped out here, and just worked these little edges out here. Found a few fish, not a great number of fish, but pretty decent fish. A lot of 16s and 17s that were hanging in here. I say a lot, maybe half a dozen to a dozen fish that were hanging off of that. And just work these little different edges out here and work these different reefs and just kind of focused on those in and around here where we could, what was accessible to us. Then we get back here on the back side of Newcomb in the Newcomb Bend area. It's a little bit softer back here, but it's still enough hard-packed sand and grass. And then you got the back lake mouths that dump out into that, so a little bit guts that hang into that. And you got some scattered shell that's back in there. We found a few redfish that was in this area here. So the time that we spent in these areas, whether it be out on Newcomb Front or Newcomb Point or out there on the Lap Reefs or back here as you got toward Holiday Beach, the Bend area, we pull some fish out, find some fish. And again, not great numbers, but just give us different area to fish, just different structure and bottom in these types of areas to just kind of maximize opportunities that came our way. Again, the main baits this past week, we stuck with the original size in the down south mostly. In the Twisted Tea did well, White Ice, Bone Diamond, and a lot of it depends on your water clarity as well. The Big Papa in that, a little bit more water back here on the backside here in the Bend was a little bit cleaner because it was protected. So we threw a little bit more translucence, like in the Mirror Lure Little Johns. We were throwing the Golden Red Glitter, the Kitchen Sink. Again, the Truth. That bait's been pretty good for us for a while now, and it's pretty versatile. You can throw it in cleaner water, you can throw it in dirtier water, and still have pretty good success with it. Of course, one that's just always a standby is Watermelon Red. It's very good for us as well. Caught a lot of fish with it. The Knock and Tail lures, again, the greenback and the heavy metal were the most productive for us with Rogue kind of sprinkled in there as well. Then, of course, the Pav lures stayed with the darker baits in that. But everything was plastics. But Double D, we had the Double D in there as well. I think Gringo, which is more of a whitish flavor, we had that. At least that's the one I was throwing. I think a couple other people were throwing some different stuff and having moderate success with that. But just another bait that you can have in your box to throw in there as well. Pav Lures has a great lineup of baits, so as does the Coastal Brew. The Pav Lures is kind of a little bit more versatile as far as they've got some stuff that's really like the soft dines that are in their arsenal in both the smaller version and the bigger version of those. So if you want to check those out there, it's a pretty good bait to have in your box, just to give you something a little bit different to throw. Great action with it as well. So another thing that have sprinkled into the arsenal, which always has been there for us, is a Marker 54 jerk shrimps. They have done pretty well for us as well, just free lining those, especially around the reefs. I like to take those and just free line those and just chunk them down there and let them sink down on top of that shell and just kind of bounce them off that. And we had some pretty good success with those too. And then you can also, if you want, you can tie those up underneath some type of rattle and popping cork if you wish, and work at the same thing, and you get pretty good success rate with that as well. So just different variety of baits and stuff. Again, the minors were the main thing that we really focused on early in the week. Now we're going to be on the transition side of it, so we're going to be getting into those wild card days. So that's going to be Upcoming week is something that you're going to want to make sure that you have different types of baits in there, size and profile, to kind of set yourself up to have successful days.